Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel, and today I want to talk to you guys about what's been going on with oil lately, kind of sum up the Saudi Arabia attacks over last weekend, what that means for oil in the future, and kind of compare and contrast Saudi Arabia's production of energy compared to that of North America. So as I'm sure a lot of you know at this point, obviously Saudi Arabia's oil production facilities were attacked last Saturday in the early morning by drones, which are suspected to be coming from Iran, although the Houthi Yemen rebels claimed responsibility for the attack. So there's been smaller scale attacks in the past couple years on Saudi's oil production, but this one is much larger and it's kind of a hit to the jugular of the kingdom's oil industry. So Aramco is the country's state-owned oil company, which is often described as the kingdom's crown jewel. Quickly talking about the basics of supply and demand, what this has done is reduced oil production across the world by about 5%, according to experts, or about 5 million barrels of crude oil per day. And as a few of you, I'm sure, again know, if supply goes down, the price is likely to go up. So on Monday morning, the price of crude oil jumped huge. A lot of oil and energy stocks across the world jumped as well. So let's just dive a little bit deeper into this attack and really get into what happened. So here's just a map of the surrounding areas. You can see Saudi Arabia on the left-hand side of this map. You have the United Arab Emirates, Oman, and then Iran across the Strait of Hormuz, or across the Gulf, sorry. The fields that were attacked were the Kurais oil field, which you can see is on the left-hand side there in the mainland of Saudi Arabia. So the explosion set off fires that apparently took several hours to douse, and they appeared to have caused significant damage. Again, as I said, it disrupted about 5 million barrels a day of production, nearly half of the kingdom's estimated output of 9.7 barrels a day, which equates to about 5% of global production. Here's a Google Maps screenshot of the area that was attacked on September 14th, and the squares highlighted in yellow are apparently the targeted areas of the drones. As I already mentioned, the Houthis had claimed responsibility for this attack, who are a military coalition occupying Yemen for the past few years, I believe about 4. The US and Saudi high-ranking officials in the Saudi government believe this attack originated out of Iran. This attack's a pretty big deal because they essentially attacked the heart of Saudi Arabia's oil infrastructure, going directly for one of their main plants without any human involvement. So what's been said is that these Houthi rebels have recently acquired drones that allow them to strike from about 1,500 kilometers away, which is insane if you think about it. They don't even need to be in the same country or anywhere even near the oil fields to have them blown up. So just another quick look at the region here. The areas highlighted in purple are on Saudi Arabia's side, whereas yellow is allied with Iraq and Iran. Oman is a country that kind of sits in the middle and deals with both sides, or manages relations on both sides. Now, news of the attacks obviously jolted financial markets, sending the oil price soaring. The price of the barrel of Brent crude surged by about 20% on Monday, only to really come down throughout the rest of the week after Saudi Arabia, or after high-ranking officials in the Saudi government said it would only take them about a week to get back to 70% production and 2 to 3 weeks to get back to 100% production. It's kind of hard to say if that is truthful or not. Some experts say it could take 2 to 3 months to get back to full production. Only time will tell, but at this point the market's trusting high-ranking Saudi officials. If you look at the millions of barrels of crude oil produced per day, you can see Saudi Arabia is right at the top in 2018 at 7.4 million barrels per day, followed by Russia at 5.5, West Africa at 4.4, Iraq at 4. The US actually isn't even in the top 10, but Canada sits in the top 6 at 3.8 million barrels per day in 2018. This prompted the US President Donald Trump to say that his government is locked and loaded and ready for an attack or a strike on Iran, which was a horrible thing to say. We're not trying to outbreak into World War III here. But after he said that, there was a Iranese official who came on CNN and essentially said that an all-out war could break out if there's any type of militaristic strike on Iran in the next few days or weeks, or at all in the future. So here's a graph of the Saudi strikes which have occurred in the past, which have disrupted oil production significantly. As you can see, the strikes of September 2019 are the highest ever in history. The next closest attack was the Iranian Revolution of the late 1970s. disrupting about 5.6 million barrels per day. This attack disrupted about 5.7, so just edging it out. But you look at some of the other disruptions in history. You have the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait in the early 90s, the Arab-Israeli war, the Iran-Iraq war, you have the Venezuelan strike, the war in Iraq, the Iraqi oil export suspension, the Six-Day War, the Suez Crisis, the Libyan Civil War, Hurricanes Katrina and Rita even. I think this is one of the most important graphs because it just goes to show how monumental the strikes on Aramco were on early Saturday morning. This attack really is unprecedented in terms of its scale and impact on production. It's really the biggest shock to oil markets in years. It's hard to say what this means for oil prices in the future, but now I just kind of want to go ahead and compare and contrast the economies of Saudi Arabia with that of North America, Canada, and the US specifically. So Saudi Arabia has an oil-based economy with strong government controls over their major economic activities. It possesses about 16% of the world's proven petroleum reserves and ranks as the largest exporter of petroleum. It also plays a leading role in OPEC. The petroleum sector accounts for roughly 87% of their budget revenues, or 42% of their GDP, and 90% of their export earnings. They've been encouraging growth in their private sector in order to diversify their economy, but it's no question their economy is driven by oil at this point. There's also been talks about bringing Aramco public. Looking at their GDP composition by sector, you have 2.6% in agriculture, which is a 2017 estimate. Actually, all of these are 2017 estimates. Industry, which could be a bunch of different things. I'll talk about that in a second, which is 44.2% of their GDP, and 53.2% is services. Industries in Saudi Arabia include crude oil production, petroleum refining, basic petrochemicals, ammonia, industrial gases, sodium hydroxide, which is caustic soda, cement, fertilizer, plastics, metals, commercial ship repair, commercial aircraft repair, and construction. So their labor force consists of 13.8 million people as of 2017, and this is kind of interesting. If you look at the note, it's only comprised of 3.1 million Saudis and 10.7 million non-Saudis. This is the 42nd largest labor force in the world. Their unemployment rate sits at about 6%, but this accounts for the total population. The unemployment among Saudi nationals is about double. This ranks 92nd in the world. Looking at their public debt, it's sitting at about 17.2% of GDP, which isn't very good. It ranks them 193rd in the world. So now let's compare that to Canada's economy, just for people living in North America, specifically north of the US border. So Canada resembles the US, no doubt, in its market-oriented economic system, pattern of production, and high living standards. Since World War II, there's been impressive growth of manufacturing, mining, and the service sectors, which has transformed the nation from a largely rural economy into a primarily industrial and urban one. They have a very large oil and gas sector, as we already talked about a second ago. They have about 3.8 million barrels of crude oil produced per day as of 2018, which is mainly derived from their western provinces, especially Alberta. They now rank third in proved oil reserves behind Venezuela and Saudi Arabia, and they're also the world's 7th largest oil producer. Canada has a slightly larger services sector than Saudi Arabia at 70.2%. Their industry is only about 28.2%, whereas agriculture is 1.6%, which I'm kind of surprised as Canada has a very rural landmass. I would have assumed that agriculture was a little bit higher. So their main industries include transportation equipment, chemicals, processed and unprocessed minerals, food products, wood and paper products, fish products, petroleum, and natural gas. They have the 31st largest labor force in the world at 19.52 million people. Unemployment rate, this seems a bit high. I believe it's come down since 2017, but it's saying here that it's 6.3%, which would rank them just behind Saudi Arabia at 94th in the world. So here's a statistic that wasn't available for Saudi Arabia. Canada has about 9.4% of their population living below the poverty line, although this estimate is a little old. This is the 2008 number, which is estimated. Note this figure is the low-income cutoff, a calculation that results in higher figures than found in many comparable economies. Canada doesn't officially have a poverty line. Public debt. So Canada's public debt as of 2017 was 89.7% of GDP. Figures are for the gross general government debt as opposed to net federal government debt. Gross general government debt includes both intergovernmental debt and the debt of public entities at the subnational level, ranking them at 25th in the world. Okay, now that we've talked about both Saudi Arabia and Canada, let's see how that compares to the US. The US obviously has one of the world's leading economies and is going to be dominating in most of these categories. So as I just said, the US has the most technologically powerful economy in the world with a per capita GDP of 59.5 thousand U.S. firms are at or near the forefront of technological advances, especially in computers, pharma, medical, aerospace, military equipment. However, it's been noted that their advantage has narrowed significantly since the end of World War II. Imported oil, this is an interesting stat. Imported oil accounts for more than 50% of U.S. consumption, and oil has a major impact on the overall health of the economy. So in December 2017, Congress passed and President Donald Trump signed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Acts, which among its various provisions reduces the corporate tax rate from 35 to 21%. Which lowers the individual tax rate for those with the highest incomes from 39.6% to 37%. Looking at their GDP composition, they have the highest services sector of all at 80%, industry at 19.1%, and agriculture only at 0.9%. So their industries are highly diversified, often world-leading, high-technology innovator, second largest industrial output in the world. These include petroleum, steel, motor vehicles, aerospace, telecommunications, chemicals, electronics, food processing, consumer goods, lumber, and mining. They have the third largest labor force in the world at 160.4 million, which is the 2017 estimate. Unemployment rate, it's currently sitting at 3.8%, but you can see the unemployment rate in 2017 was 4.4, which ranked 62nd in the world. Public debt sitting at 78.8%, which ranks them 36th in the world. Some of their major export partners include Canada, Mexico, China, and Japan, Canada being the largest at 18.3% as of 2017. Import partners, so I'm sure this has changed, especially since the recent tariff wars, but China sitting at 21.6%, you have Mexico at 13.4%, Canada at 12.8%, Japan at 5.8%, and Germany at 5%. So what does this all mean for oil prices in the future? To be honest, I don't fully trust the high-ranking Saudi officials. This is potentially a means of propaganda for them. If they show signs of weakness, it might be a sign of time to attack for their enemies. Even though they say production is going to be back at its peak within a couple weeks, I don't fully believe them. I definitely side with experts on this one, maybe because I have a significant position in energy in the stock market currently, but I do believe it's going to take a month or two for them to get back to peak production. If you look at the attacks in the past, this is the largest crude oil per barrel production per day since the 1980s at 5.7 million barrels per day, which is insane. That's an insane amount of oil. There's no way they can get that back up and running in a matter of weeks. I think it's going to take them months, and for that reason, I am certainly long oil at this time. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, don't forget to smash the like button, share the video with a friend if you learned something, and comment. Let me know what you think of the video. Give me some ideas. I'm always open to what you guys want to see. Let me know. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching. Peace out.